Good morning. This is a place where we come to name and discover life's meaning, where we practice the fragile art of learning how to be human, how to live in community, how to accept the realities of our power, our powerlessness, and the truth that all things change and eventually all things end. Each person who gathers here, however they gather, enriches our shared search for a deeper, more compassionate truth. We offer a special welcome to all those gathering this morning by live stream. To our friends in the pews, please take a moment and turn toward the camera near the welcoming congregation banner to wave and offer your greeting. And those here in the sanctuary, let's now turn and greet each other. Good morning and welcome to Winchester Unitarian Society. I'm Peter McEntee, a member of this congregation and serving as your worship associate for this Sunday. Today's service is being led by the Reverend Cynthia Davidson, our affiliated community minister. Our affiliation with Reverend Cindy was established through our mutual commitment to the seventh principle of Unitarian Universalism, quote, respect for the interdependent web of life of which we are a part, unquote, leading to a commitment to environmental justice and sustainability. Along with being our affiliated community minister, Reverend Cindy serves as the executive director of the Massachusetts chapter of Interfaith Power and Light, the organization that will be our Share the Plate recipient this morning. More on that later. After worship, today, all are invited to coffee and conversation in the Sims room at the back of the sanctuary. Before we continue with our service, I invite Director of Music John Kramer to make a special announcement.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning, everybody. Just wanted to invite everybody to our first concert of the 2023-2024 concert season. This Friday night, October 27th, and I'm very, very excited to be presenting a concert of my own works. You've all sung them, especially when we sing the children out, so I hope we enjoy that experience. And I'm really pleased to be joined by my colleagues, Julia Cash and Sam O, who you've also heard in the sanctuary performing my cello sonata, my violin sonata, and a piano trio. So that's Friday night at 8 p.m. We are still accepting sponsorships for the concert series, and proceeds from the concert series support the good work of this faith community. So look forward to seeing you on Friday night. Now let us open our hearts and minds to the spirit of worship.
In the words of my good colleague, Reverend Stephen Schick, this place has been waiting for us to gather our dreams of justice and peace. This place has been waiting for us to honor it by opening our hearts and speaking our minds. This place has been waiting for us to fill it with compassion and loving kindness. This place has been waiting for us to draw from it a breath of common purpose. This place has been waiting for us to listen to the wisdom of its silence and to fill it with the urgency of new possibilities. this place has been waiting for us to make it sacred by our coming together. Come, let us worship together.
I now invite Jeremiah Fowler to come forward to light our chalice. The words for dedication are by Lois Van Leer. We light this chalice not because we must, but because we may. We light this chalice not because we have the truth, but because we each come bearing and seeking many truths. We light this chalice in connection across culture, distance, class, and language. We light this chalice of light, hope, and justice. We light this chalice to kindle our hearts and minds. And now please rise in body or in spirit to join in singing our opening hymn, Do It Now, Sing for the Climate. The words are printed in your order of service and will be posted on the live stream.
I'd like to invite the kids and anyone else to come forward for a story. I got so into that song, I forgot to come up front. I forgot. Come on up. Good morning. So, normally, you're used to seeing Reverend Heather up here with me in the mornings. But today, Reverend Cindy is with us. As our community minister, she works in the community rather than in church. She is ours because we've agreed to support her important work on climate change. So today, Reverend Cindy is here to talk about her work while Reverend Heather takes a much-deserved break. So let's all say hi to Reverend Cindy. Hi. So today is going to be a lot of fun in RE. You guys came here on a great day. We're going to get to meet our friend Margaret outside and plant some garlic in our garden. So I want to know, how many of you have a garden at home? Raise your hands. Wow, lots of gardens. And do you grow flowers or vegetables? Vegetables? Milo? Spices. Ooh. Oh, chives, yes. How about out there? Anybody else grow flowers or vegetables? Yeah? Oh, look at them all. Lots and lots. So, yes, lots of fruits too. Fruits and flowers and vegetables.
So what's your favorite thing that you grow? I'm here. What do you like most? I heard chives, yes? Tomatoes, all kinds of tomatoes. And?
Tomatoes too,
Yeah. We all have our favorites. We like to have a garden here at Winchester Unitarian Society so that we always have pretty flowers to look at when we come here. And I have been admiring them. They are beautiful. And we also grow vegetables and herbs for ourselves and for others to have to eat.
Now, as some of you know, a garden can be a lot of work, right? It can be a lot of work. There's always something to do. In the winter, we have to plan what we're going to plant, maybe order some seeds, maybe start some seeds in little pots inside while it's still cold and snowy outside.
And then in the spring, we have to prepare the soil for the seeds or the young plants that we transplant. Now, sometimes not all the seeds will sprout, so we may have to plant more or change our plans. And in the summer, we're busy weeding the garden and watering the plants.
And then in early fall, like right now, we're busy well, not now. In early fall, we're busy harvesting a lot of vegetables and maybe even secretly dropping some off on our neighbor's steps. Has anyone discovered vegetables when they open the door or when they return home on their steps, like zucchinis or tomatoes? Never? Oh, you're lucky. I mean, that's too bad. And later, when there's more planting to do as well, like planting tulip bulbs and foods like garlic that need all winter to sleep in the earth so that they can sprout up in the spring.
And it's easy to forget that all this work is happening when we get our flowers and vegetables at the store. Isn't it? No. Sometimes when we forget this important work, we can forget how important the earth really is to us. We can forget how important it is to care for and tend the ground beneath our feet, the actual soil, and all the flowers and trees around us. And we can forget how much we need a healthy earth to live.
So, thanks to our friend Margaret's hard work and lots of helpers, we keep a garden here, in part to remind us of how much we and other people need the earth to be healthy. We plant garlic together in the fall, just like we will today, to remind ourselves to take care and be gentle with the earth like we are with each other, because the earth is important to each of us and all of us, and we must care for it so that it will last. So now I invite the grown-ups to sing the children and teachers to religious education. Your words are in the order of service.
We now come to the centering time in our service, beginning with a responsive reading, an adaptation of Remember by Joy Harjo. When I invite the community to respond, I will open my arms like this. At that time, please respond, "We are Earth." Let's practice. We are Earth. Excellent. After the responsive reading, all are invited into the ritual of kindling of the light, a time to light a candle here or at home, signifying a joy, sorrow, or concern that you carry within. At that time, if you would like a candle brought to you, please raise your hand, and Peter will find you. After we kindle the light, we will be together in a time of shared silence, and then we will sing hymn number 173 in the gray hymnal, "In the Branches of the Forest." Let us begin. Remember the earth whose skin you are, red earth, black earth, yellow earth, white earth, brown earth. We are earth. Remember the plants, trees, animal life who all have their tribes, their families, their histories too. Talk to them, listen to them. They are alive poems. We are earth. Remember the wind. Remember her voice. She knows the origin of this universe. We are earth. Remember you are all people and all people are you. Remember you are this universe and this universe is you. We are earth. Remember all is in motion, is growing, is you. We are earth. Remember, language comes from this. Remember the dance language is, that life is. Remember, we are earth. Let us now kindle the light.
Today's reading is an excerpt from Under a White Sky, The Nature of the Future by Elizabeth Kolbert, the noted nature writer and Pulitzer Prize-winning author of The Sixth Extinction. In the afterword of her book, dated October 2021, Kolbert writes, "Endings matter. This isn't just a truism, it's a scientific fact demonstrated by dozens of experiments. Recent books about the environment, which tend to be, if not exactly painful, then at least gloomy, usually end with what I call the additional 3 pages. After describing just how bad things really are for insects or orangutans or ice caps or the planet in general, the author explains why there's reason for optimism. Often the final chapter includes steps for the concerned reader to take. Plant native flowers, ride a bike, take to the streets, or if all else fails, decamp to Mars. The last impression left is, if not exactly upbeat, then at least less unpleasant. I'd like to end that way too, but I can't. All of this is not to say there's nothing to be done. Planting native flowers, riding bikes, installing solar panels, these are all steps that, if taken by enough people, would make a real difference. Political action is essential, and protest is one way to affect it. But in this book, I've tried to be honest about the scale of the challenge and about the difficulty of arresting processes of global change once they've been set in motion. It would be disingenuous for me to use these final pages to suggest otherwise. One last point. Neither optimism nor pessimism alters the fact that we live in an extraordinary moment. The choices that we'll make that we are making right now, without necessarily being aware of them, will determine the future of life for our children and their children and all the other species on Earth for generations to come. This is the situation we're in, and there's no avoiding it, because in the end, this marvelous, fragile planet is all we've got.
Thank you, choir, and thank you, John, for that wonderful music. Makes me wonder if we shouldn't all set sermons to music. Maybe that's a project for another day. In the creation story, as told in the book of Genesis, chapter 1, verses 26 through 28, God has created all the creatures and then creates mankind and gives the command that humankind should rule over all the creatures, fill the earth, and subdue it. Essentially, the charge is to take care of the creatures, tend the earth, and subdue all that threatens the flourishing of life. The command to rule over or have dominion over, in some translations, the creatures, is often poorly interpreted as a God-given right to dominate, when it is in fact a responsibility to use our endowed capacities as humans, our intelligence, our powers of reason and wisdom, to so-called rule with benevolence, respecting the laws of nature and looking out for the best interest of all in the kingdom or the kingdom of God. Fortunes have been made and lost. Landscapes have been denuded by those eager to see the earth differently, to see it, as in the words of Pope Francis, as an object of exploitation, unbridled use, and unlimited ambition. In Laudato Deum, which is Pope Francis's recently released apostolic exhortation to all good people on the climate crisis, he writes, "We cannot claim that nature is a mere setting in which we develop our lives and projects, for we are part of nature, included in it, and thus in constant interactions with it. And thus we do not look at the world from without, but from within." And he adds that human life is incomprehensible and unsustainable without other creatures. Remember, we are kin. The Pope continues, God has joined us so closely to the world around us that we feel the desertification of the soil almost as a physical ailment, and the extinction of a species as a painful disfigurement. Let us stop thinking then of human beings as autonomous, omnipotent, and limitless, and begin to think of ourselves differently, in a humbler, more fruitful way. I say, let us begin to think of ourselves as ever-faithful stewards. How are we doing in that role, broadly speaking? Well, as we have heard, our planetary health is declining, near collapse, some say. We have a global imbalance that is provoking the warming of the planet and precipitating a loss of biodiversity. Temperatures, we know, have risen at an unprecedented speed. On the Earth's surface, on the surface of the oceans and in their depths, and in the atmosphere. Seas are acidifying, glaciers are receding, snow covers diminishing, and the sea level is constantly rising. Not exactly a clean bill of health. We know that it's increasing levels of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere that are responsible for this warming. Water vapor, carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide. According to NASA, water vapor is the Earth's most abundant greenhouse gas, responsible for about half of Earth's greenhouse effect. And the surface warming that we are creating by our production of other greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, increases the temperature, and then the water evaporates, creating more water vapor, thus setting off a cycle of increased warming. We're so accustomed to hearing about water in the atmosphere as a result of global warming, when it is also one of several drivers of climate change. And this is an important distinction to keep in mind with regard to appropriate climate solutions. So we know the other drivers are carbon dioxide, which we associate with the burning of fossil fuels and deforestation. Methane, which we associate with so-called natural gas leaks the melting of permafrost, and intensive animal husbandry. And nitrous oxide associated with the use of chemical fertilizers. But how did we get here? Just how did we get here? Apparently, we have failed to respect the laws of nature. And we can point to centuries of destructive agricultural practices, the felling of primary forests to clear land for agriculture, for cattle grazing, for settlements, and the extraction and combustion of fossil fuels that have powered the Industrial Revolution and our modern life. Ultimately, at the heart of it, through ignorance or vice, we have lost our connection to ecologically sustainable practices and lifestyles, and we have failed to take seriously the reality that what we do to the planet, we do to ourselves. We have failed to remember we are Earth. So where does that leave us, and what does the future hold? We know the carbon dioxide levels were just over 419 parts per million yesterday, with 350 parts per million said to be the upper limit for a livable climate. We know there's a 50-50 chance we'll surpass a critical threshold of 1.5 degrees Celsius of global warming in the next 5 years. Some say 10 to 15. Here in this part of the world, a UMass Boston report from June 2022 shared these climate risk projections for this date. By the end of the century, the numbers of days over 90 degrees here is projected to more than double, bringing more drought and a rise in heat mortality, which will be felt most acutely in urban heat islands. Groundwater recharge is expected to decrease and impact the quantity and quality of our drinking water. And daily precipitation, no surprise, is expected to increase 20 to 30%, with coastal, river, and stormwater flooding increasing. Now, these shouldn't come as too much of a surprise, as these kinds of predictions and warnings from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change have been with us for quite some time. So, given our situation in these climate changing times, what does it mean to be a faithful steward of creation? Being faithful stewards means that our actions are guided by our values, by our faith, by the tenets of our beliefs, and that we live in harmony with the natural world, that we respect its natural limits and bounds, something that has been well articulated and practiced by many of our indigenous kin for centuries. Unitarian Universalist values that ground my thinking about this include the seventh principle, affirming and promoting respect for the interdependent web of existence, of which we are but a part. Our second principle on justice, compassion, and equity in human relations. And the proposed eighth principle, which compels us to dismantle racism and other oppressions. Are you with me on that? Great. But still, we always want to know, what shall I do? What is ours to do, practically speaking? So the challenge is to get to net zero emissions by 2050. The challenge is to do so while conserving and restoring biodiversity. The challenge is to do this while minimizing pollution and waste. The challenge is to do this by paying attention to the health of our ecosystems, because our health depends on theirs. We are fortunate that we have a theology confirmed by reality that everything is interconnected. So our actions should be guided as much by how we are doing what is needed as much as it is by what it is that needs to be done. So broadly speaking, today I want to focus on three major points: the need to reduce emissions, the need to cool the planet with nature-based solutions, and the need to create climate justice. Being faithful stewards means we need to reduce our emissions from the burning of fossil fuels. Even though emissions are expected to trend slightly downward, the transition to clean energy and off of fossil fuels is not progressing rapidly enough. As Pope Francis points out in his work, when he is referring to the failure of the United Nations COP summit to deliver on a just transition and his hopes for the upcoming summit at the end of next month. One can only hope for binding forms of energy transition that meet three conditions: that they be efficient, obligatory, and readily monitored. He then calls for a new process marked by three requirements: that it be drastic, intense, and count on the commitment of all, something that has not happened so far. And it is on this subject that he exhorts us with the statement in your order of service. We must move beyond the mentality of appearing to be concerned, but not having the courage needed to produce substantial changes. Although the measures that we can take now are costly, the cost will be all the more burdensome the longer we wait. So as you may be aware, Massachusetts Interfaith Power and Light, which I serve as executive director, has a long history of helping congregations reduce their carbon emissions. We offer environmental stewardship assessments and suggest specific energy-saving measures to take, recognizing that old and historic buildings present unique challenges. And we have done this here with Winchester Unitarian and are still in conversation. We guide congregations who are eager to chart a pathway towards net zero, and we encourage them to move from oil or gas to electrification and renewable energy as much and as quickly as possible. This has been our signature work for the last 2 decades. And yes, we do hear about the high cost involved. We also recognize that most congregations who have sought our help to make significant energy upgrades have been from affluent communities. So Mass IPO is exploring how to bring the benefits of solar and energy efficiency to congregations in environmental justice communities. Even with all of today's state and federal incentives, it is challenging for most congregations to afford these energy upgrades, especially given their financial constraints from many years of community disinvestment and wealth inequality. Honestly, I wonder, could there be no better time than now to reverse years of disinvestment in our under-resourced communities? Seriously. Being faithful stewards means we also need to do all we can do to cool the planet with nature-based solutions. We can literally tend the earth itself, the soil, tilling it, gardening, engaging in nature-based practices and climate solutions that help prevent biodiversity loss, that increase our carbon sinks, and move water from the atmosphere into the soil and waterways. Things like conservation and rewilding, reforestation efforts. The organization Biodiversity for Climate claims the scientific community now recognizes that even if we go to zero emissions tomorrow, the tragedies will continue to mount because of what is already in the atmosphere. If we think that our only option is emissions reductions, as essential as they are, we hit a wall to go. Nowhere to go but resignation and despair. But when we add eco-restoration to the equation, a remarkable story emerges, one of renewal and hope, one of regeneration. Revitalized ecosystems help stabilize the climate, even if only in that particular area at first. We need to recognize that bare ground is not normal, so leave no bare soil behind. Think here about creating biodiverse pocket parks and rain gardens, community gardens and permaculture plantings, using native plants and perennial grasses, or volunteering on projects to restore health to nearby parks, wetlands, and waterways. The aim is to leave no creature nor living thing behind, and to leave no patch of bare soil unattended. Finally, as Unitarian Universalists, being faithful stewards means that we must try to bend that arc of the physical and the moral universe towards climate justice. Many of you are familiar with this idea of the moral arc bending toward justice, which was popularized during the Civil Rights era by Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., whose use of the original quote by the Unitarian minister Theodore Parker reflected his conviction that it is we, the people, who bend the arc by our actions. So what does that mean today? It means we work for climate resilience and climate justice in the communities where we live, where we work, where we play, and where we worship. We center justice making, not simply climate solutions, in the climate planning and mitigation and adaptation efforts. We focus on equity and inclusion, and we privilege those who are most impacted by climate change, giving seats at the table for the leaders from the communities that are most impacted. And we play the role, if we are not those people, of allies flanking that leadership, since it is those leaders who know best what their community needs. So we must mend the web of life and society by stitching together all these different kinds of strong, collaborative, right relationships. At Mass IPL, we affirm that climate justice comes only with racial justice, only with economic justice, only with immigration justice, only with indigenous rights. Make no mistake, they are all connected. At Mass IPL, we are also beginning to see many faith communities across the country building upon their greening the sanctuary work and the getting to net zero work, and beginning to take on broader topics of climate resiliency and climate justice in their own areas and communities. When we are called to mitigate and adapt to climate change on the physical front through a climate justice lens, things may look a little different. Mitigation strategies focus on bringing help, not harm, to vulnerable communities. Adaptation strategies focus on prioritizing the well-being of people and communities most exposed to climate harm and least able to cope with it. And we do understand that years of systemic neglect of communities of color and low income leave them less able to prepare for and recover from disasters, leading to even more disparate harm. So I want to give you a few ideas of what I'm thinking about in this approach of working through a climate justice lens. And remember, there are no silver bullets, only silver buckshot. So through a climate justice lens, mitigation and adaptation strategies might include things like ensuring that wind, solar, and other clean energy projects bring more benefits than burden to the communities of color, and expanding their access to clean energy and energy efficiency incentives for low-income households, for renters who often don't qualify. It can mean planting trees to reduce extreme heat and improve air quality in urban heat islands and cities. Yes, there is a place for planting trees. It can mean restoring bare grounds and vacant lots, seeding community gardens in their place, or permaculture plantings, practicing regenerative agriculture. It can mean putting at-risk communities first in line for funding for pre-disaster planning, and ensuring that they receive the same level of disaster relief benefits that go to less vulnerable, wealthier populations. As people of faith, we can play an important role in our communities when we make the time to study and critique proposed policies and programs and projects. When we advocate for the interest and well-being of the most impacted, who may not be ourselves, and when we speak out to ensure that the most vulnerable are finally at the front of the line. This is where working with neighboring communities and stretching is so important. We would also do well to consider ways that churches can serve their communities as hubs of resilience. I've been hearing a lot about resilience hubs. Places where we can help our neighbors weather the physical, social, and spiritual crises of the climate crises. we can focus on providing place-based local preparation and support, such as educating residents about extreme weather preparedness and the other impacts of climate change and how they can respond. By offering practical material assistance to residents in the aftermath of a severe weather event. Think of things like providing a space for phone charging, a space for warming up in the winter storms, a space for cooling in heat waves. We can offer spiritual support in small group ministries, in special events and vigils, and incorporate healing rituals into worship, into our own spiritual practices, into our community life. More and more we know that we need these special places and containers for grieving what we are or fear we are about to lose to climate change. We need places like this to lay down our burdens and strengthen our resolve, to know that we are in this together and we will survive together. The role of the local faith community in this work, as well as civically engaged citizens, cannot be underestimated at this time. In closing, I want to share more words from Pope Francis, which I find helpful as we consider all that is at stake and reflect on that maxim, think globally, act locally. He writes, many groups and organizations within civil society help to compensate for the shortcomings of the international community, its lack of coordination in complex situations, and its lack of attention to fundamental human rights. Unless citizens control political power, national, regional, and municipal, it will not be possible to control damage to the environment. At the same time, he writes, it is necessary to be honest and recognize that the most effective solutions will not come from individual efforts alone, but above all from major political decisions on the national and international level. And then he adds, nonetheless, every little bit helps, and avoiding an increase of 1/10 of a degree of the global temperature would already suffice to alleviate some suffering for many people. It's important, he continued, to realize there are no lasting changes without cultural changes, without a maturing of lifestyles and convictions within societies. And there are no cultural changes without personal changes. So we've come full circle in a way. His writing seems a good complement to these words that we heard earlier in the reading from Elizabeth Colbert. We do indeed live in an extraordinary moment, one where the choices that we make will determine the future of life on this marvelous, fragile planet. And so today I charge you to be faithful stewards, to make choices that affirm our collective right to a clean environment, where the air and the water are clean, the soil and the ecosystems are healthy, and all can peaceably thrive. Remember, too, to tend to our communities in order to ensure that our resources are shared equitably, and to truly welcome all hands on deck as we work for a livable future for our kin and those yet to be born. Remember, we are Earth, and this place is waiting for us to be its faithful stewards. May it be so. See to it.
We now come to the offering, in which we are asked to contribute to the financial support of this congregation. But more than that, the offering is like a workout for our spirit of generosity, where we share what we have with others while we proclaim our values. To this end, this congregation has pledged to donate half of everything we collect that is not otherwise designated to other organizations whose aims align with our own. This morning, we share our gifts with Massachusetts Interfaith Power and Light, which works with faith communities and people of faith to pray, act, and mobilize for climate and environmental justice, by providing technical expertise on lowering energy use and carbon emissions, and through education and policy advocacy. Look for information about a Mass IPL panel discussion to be held here on November 5th at 2 p.m. about how congregations can move further down the path toward making their buildings free of carbon emissions. Here are different ways you can donate. Those in the sanctuary may give cash or checks or may donate electronically. You can send a text message to the number in your order of service or visit our website under the giving page. If you're giving for the first time, either in person or online, you are our guest. In-person attendees can find a physical visitor card in the pew racks in front of you. Please complete it and put it in the collection plate. Information about how to give online and how to complete the virtual visitor card will soon be shared with live stream attendees through text on your screen. Your generously given offering will now be gratefully accepted. Those who wish to do so are invited to join in the unison affirmation printed in your order of service. We gather not for ourselves alone, but to use our common power to build the beloved community within and beyond these walls. We create and reaffirm this covenant this day to make justice flourish, to practice compassion amidst difference, and to embody transformative love. Now please rise in body or in spirit to join in singing our closing hymn, number 163 in the gray hymnal, For the Earth Forever Turning.
Thank
There is too much hardship in this world to not find joy every day. There is too much injustice in this world to not right the balance every day. There is too much pain in this world to not heal every day. Each of us ministers to a weary world. Let us go forth now and do that which calls us to make this world more loving, more compassionate, and more filled with the grace of divine presence every day. Go in peace, practice love. Amen.
Please say with me the words for extinguishing the chalice printed in your order of service. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. This service is ended, but our life of service continues. Let's continue our conversation in the Sims room.